Well, good morning, everybody in Brazil, and good afternoon from The Hague. A warm welcome to the first event of the Evidence Pavilion at the COP30, and especially a warm welcome to the online session on the IOB evaluation of the integration of climate change adaptation in water and food security programs funded by the Netherlands government. My name is Peter van der Knap. I'm director with IOB Evaluation. I'm here to introduce basically the team lead, Jelmer Kamstra, and senior researcher, Pim de Beer, who will be moderating this session. IOB is proud to be part of this first Evaluation Evidence Pavilion, made possible by a lot of organizations, the Evidence for Climate Action Platform. I'd like to thank especially the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank, and also thanks to the European Evaluation Society for sponsoring this session. Pim and Jelmer, over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and also from my side, welcome everyone to this session. Before I give the word to Jelmer, our speaker of today, I'd like to make one announcement. For you, it's not possible to use your microphone nor to raise your hand. Instead, we highly encourage you to ask any questions you have in the chat box, both during and after the presentation of Jelmer, and I will moderate the chat. So that's it for now. Over to you, Jelmer. Good luck with the presentation.
Thank you very much. My name is Jelmer Kamstra. I was a team lead for research into the integration of climate change adaptation into water and food security programs funded by the Netherlands. And I will be presenting our main findings here in this webinar. I will try to do it as quickly as possible to leave some time for Q&As afterwards. So what is it we did? We did an evaluation on water and food security programs that had an OECD Rio adaptation marker. And we visited two countries, Bangladesh and Mozambique, for site visits to answer a central question on how climate change adaptation is being integrated into these programs. And to what extent also it has reduced the risks for vulnerable people to the effects of climate change. So first of all, we needed to find a way, how do you measure the integration of adaptation into development programs? So we started using the climate lens, which basically boils down to 3 steps. The first step is doing risk analyses. The second step is doing integration of adaptation strategies into programs. And then the third step entails the actual implementation. So what that is basically, first of all, this risk analysis, it's about answering the question, how does climate change impact the goals of your program or the target groups that you want to reach with your program? And especially with regards to marginalized groups. So it's about knowing the climate scenarios for the region where you're working. You should have them on long-term climate scenarios, and they should be localized to be useful for your program. You should do an exposure analysis. So to what extent are the goals of your program threatened by climate change, the groups that you're working with? What are the physical assets that are threatened by effects of climate change? And then a third question to answer about in your risk analysis is the vulnerability of the groups that you're working with. What are their capacities to cope with climate change, and what are their specific vulnerabilities? So you need this information to go on to the second step of integrating climate change adaptation into your program, which is designing and integrating strategies to cope with the effects of climate change. And there's many different possibilities. You have political strategies. You could go about strengthening knowledge on climate change. There's, of course, technical solutions like hydrometers or infrastructure like building dams. We know nature-based solutions can sometimes be very effective. For instance, if there's coastal erosion, you can use mangroves. Social behavioral ones like cleaning up drainage canals. And of course, there's also financial strategies, for instance, climate insurance. So you need to be able to integrate these kind of strategies into your program based on the analysis you did in the first step. And then the third step is actually implementing these strategies. It's about the monitoring evaluation for resilience and exposure. And you need to periodically update these first and second steps, doing your analysis and designing your strategies to keep up to date with the latest information on climate change for your program. And the goal is to move from reactive strategies towards anticipatory strategies, and to go from incremental small steps towards more transformative programming on the adaptation for climate change. So we combined these three steps in a model together with a model that they use in the integration of gender mainstreaming into programs. So basically, this is a way to measure the amount of integration of climate change into your program. So how well did you do your analysis? Step one. How well did you integrate it into your program, which is step two? And then we were answering the question for each program: to what extent was it actually implemented? So if you score very low, you will be a maladaptive program. If you score very high, you will be a transformative program. So for the 19 programs which we looked at, we basically used this schematic to come up with a score per program, which is of course a qualitative analysis. It was quite difficult to do for reasons we will explain next. So the findings for our 19 programs can be mainly summarized as the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what was the good? The good findings is basically that we have about half of the programs that score CCA, so climate change adaptation responsive. These are programs that integrate climate change well into their design and strategies, and they also implement it. Good examples are the Delta programs, which the Netherlands funds. In Bangladesh, it's the Bangladesh 2100 Delta Plan. And in Mozambique, for instance, it's the Beira Master Plan, where a lot of different strategies are combined. Governance strategies, strengthening institutions, and also the more physical side of building dams, infrastructure, and these kind of things. So it's a mix of very many different strategies. And government bodies are often actively involved in these programs. Another very good example was the agriculture smallholder adaptation program, which is integrating climate change adaptation throughout IFAD's portfolio. So these were the good findings that we were able to locate in the Dutch portfolio. But also we found some bad findings, which is that about half of the programs we looked at actually scored CCA blind or sensitive, which means that the blind programs didn't have any strategies on climate change adaptation. The CCA sensitive ones, they did have some strategies integrated at least into their documents, their documentation, but we couldn't find any implementation of these strategies. This had to do with limited climate risk analyses. So the first step was very limited for many programs, which resulted then in very reactive or very abstract or missing climate change adaptation strategies, which is the second step. And then when looking at the implementation, it becomes very hard to find what was actually done on climate change adaptation, because it was very difficult to track in reality what these programs were actually doing on climate change adaptation. So again, these are programs on water, on food security, on integrated water resource management, on WASH, these kind of programs. Then the ugly findings. So we also found that there was very limited inclusion of marginalized groups, so the people that need adaptation most. We found that often analyses, like specific analyses for the vulnerability of these groups, were missing. And when there were solutions introduced, often they were quite expensive, or they were too difficult for these groups to apply. Also, we found that some programs chose to focus on groups that were a little bit more well off, because it's quite expensive and difficult to reach the most marginalized groups. One of our interviews, for instance, mentioned that, okay, with the same amount of money, we could reach 100,000 people within an urban area, but we could only reach 10,000 people in a suburban area. So these are the kind of dilemmas that programs also are facing. We also found that there was limited reach and participation of marginalized groups within these programs. And some of the programs were assuming that there would be a trickle-down effect. So if you would have a focus on the groups that are a little bit more well off, it would trickle down to the groups that are most marginalized. But we did not find any such effect. Luckily, we also found a few programs that were very good at integrating participation of the most marginalized groups. For instance, the ASAP program by IFAD. These programs had in common that they were inclusive and participatory in their approach. So marginalized groups were included throughout the process. They did focus on addressing immediate needs right here and right now. People need food, people need shelter. So these needs were part of the program, and they used these immediate needs to start building capacity and to start building resilience for the long term. And a way to do that was to link these experiences, to link this capacity building to experienced effects of climate change. So if there had been a cyclone or a flood, they used this to show why it's necessary to change certain behaviors or certain tactics. And especially important was that these programs did a gender analysis and took specific action on the needs of women and girls, who are often the most marginalized and the most vulnerable to climate change. Then in our analysis, we wanted to also see, okay, but to what extent did these programs actually help people reduce their vulnerability to climate change? This question was very difficult to answer, especially because these step 1, doing your climate risk analysis, and step 2, implementing it into your program, remained very vague. Within these programs, it was often a lack of priority because the right now needs were at the forefront. And also there was a limited integration of measuring the effects of climate change adaptation into these M&E systems of these programs. So it was very difficult to track what they were actually doing, which possibly also leads to underreporting. So maybe a part of the programs that we looked at were actually doing something on climate change adaptation while we couldn't see it. So in the end, it's kind of difficult that the programs that we looked at, they are being reported by our government as climate finance. But it's difficult to see what their effectiveness actually is. And for part of them, we couldn't even see what they were doing on it. And part of that is caused by the OECD criteria for the OECD Rio markers. that the criteria are relatively light. For instance, you don't need to apply a climate lens to your program to be able to get such a marker. Okay, so in terms of recommendations, we recommend that programs apply a climate lens structurally and upfront, which means that when you set up a program, it can also be different kinds of programs. It doesn't need to be a water or food security program, but also programs in the area of health or social development. They should also be starting to integrate climate change, because it will also be affecting their work. So apply this climate lens beforehand and during your programming. So start out with your climate risk analysis, find the most important risks and design adaptation strategies for them. And do it beforehand, but also during the program itself. You should also invest in the monitoring and evaluation of climate change adaptation to be able to track implementation and to track also the results of your work in terms of reduced exposure or reduced vulnerability of the groups you're working with. You should also involve marginalized groups in the analysis, in the design, and also in the implementation of climate change adaptation measures, because that will, in that case, they will be able to really apply them and use them in the field. So this should be part of the whole program. But this takes time, and also it costs money. So it might be at the expense of the reach of your program. We would also say that you should make this kind of approach mandatory for all the programs with a Rio adaptation marker. So we advised our climate change adaptation, our climate diplomacy team at the ministry to start lobbying the OECD to also integrate this on a wider scale, that other donors would also need to do this reporting in this way. And also you need to then periodically update this. So for instance, when you have a midterm review of a program, that should be part of your midterm review to check whether you actually integrated this climate change adaptation in your program and whether you are starting to see the first kind of results. And if that's totally not the case, then you should actually remove the Rio marker. And then one of the things we found is that many of these programs were already existing development programs, so they were not new and additional climate funding. And that is why we also advise that, okay, if you really want to have an ambitious climate policy, that actually requires additional resources. Also because during our field work, we saw many examples of loss, many examples of destruction through hurricanes, through floodings. So the need is very high. I will stop my presentation here, and I would luckily like to open the discussion on questions. So Pim, the floor is to you.
Thank you very much, Jelmer, and well done on the time as well. So that makes that we have more than 10 minutes of time for discussions. I just wanted to say I don't see anything yet in the chat box, so I would recommend to share any thoughts or ask questions if you have any, to do that now. But now one is coming from William, and he asked whether your evidence offer any insights on what motivated CCA interventions, or is it a monitoring and evaluation problem that CCA is not effectively captured, which is a good question to me.
Yeah, that's a good question. We were actually finding various explanations of why it was not being integrated well into programs. Some of them are kind of very mundane in the sense that some of the programs mention that, okay, you need to show your donors results. So we need to do something which is very easy to measure, and we need to produce results in the short term. That usually links to quantitative indicators, for instance, in the field of food security or water. And that then this pressure for results actually makes these short-term results more important than the long-term results. That was one of the things. Another thing was that it's quite complicated to especially do this first step, the risk analyses. You need to have right climate projections, and sometimes these are not readily available, or if they are available, they're quite complicated to translate to local situations. So one of our other recommendations was that donors can support local or domestic meteorological agencies. So they have the capacity to make these kind of projections for their countries and various regions. Especially in Mozambique, that was, for instance, the case. We were speaking with their meteorological agency, and they were telling us that they were already having troubles making the day-to-day projections because the coverage of the country was not enough. Their measurement stations, they were not operational enough. So let alone making projections for 30 years ahead was really difficult. So this kind of step, you really need to have this technical knowledge to make that, and not every program can do it by itself. But if these projections are available, then programs should at least be able to do an exposure and vulnerability analysis for their specific type of group. So that should then be possible. Is this an answer to the question? Is this enough?
Yeah, thanks, Jelmer. Maybe I can add something that came to my mind, is that we also visited projects where it was so obvious that beneficiaries had to deal with climate change already, that the program was just designed according to the situation. So it was using the local context, that the only problem was indeed an M&E problem, that this analysis was not being made explicit for the higher level program and the policy makers. So that it was, for us, it seemed that there was no analysis, although the local people and the people on the ground of the projects, they actually dealt already with the climate change issues. But like you said, there was no use of projections, and there was no strategy, a long-term strategy, because of this lacking analysis. But if you ask people on the ground, that there were many stories that they just told us, well, we have to deal with it already. So the design is according to climate change. That was the argument. Well, another question is coming, otherwise I had one. The question is, could you speak to the assumptions basis behind the trickle-down effect? Yeah, that's also a very good one. Focusing on the relatively better off groups with assumption that the benefits will trickle down to less well-off groups. Yeah, also a very good question, and I think you have an answer on that, Jelmer.
Yeah. We found, for instance, programs that are focusing more on the farmers that are better off, and they were supposed to provide trainings trainings to farmers in the area, to subsistence farmers in the area. And the logic behind it was that if we help these farmers to commercialize, especially the ones that are already a little bit better off, then they can pass on this knowledge to the ones in their area. But when speaking with them, they could not give one example of a farmer, a subsistence farmer that had made the step up as well. And a similar thing was happening with regard to hurricane-proof housing. There were houses being built for middle classes, and it was thought that if people move, then there will be in other areas there will be cheap housing available for the most marginalized groups. But these kind of logics were not working well. So one of our recommendations was, if you want to help the poorest groups, then you really should focus directly on them and design strategies directly relevant to them, and don't rely on trickle down to do it for you. So that was our main finding in that area.
Yeah, thanks, Jelmer. Then the next question is on the countries we visited, Bangladesh and Mozambique. What could be the best practice that could be shared in terms of integrating CCA program into national, local, and community activities? Because I believe climate change is everybody's business.
Yeah,
please keep it short.
I think these Delta plans are quite a good example where multiple levels meet. You need a plan at a high level, but the plan, of course, has different parts to it. It has parts, for instance, in the Beira Master Plan, it's about economic growth, economic development of the city. It's about infrastructure, about dredging canals, about building coastal defense. But also it's about behavior change, and it's about providing people with a chance to a better life. So you need all these different levels to link up, and sometimes that's also where we find that on the highest level the plan is quite good, but when you start implementing different segments of the plan, you really need to have a link between them. So it's about the coherence, and sometimes that gets lost a little in implementation, and sometimes also the people on the ground are lost in this process as well. But again, then maybe the best practice that we found was also this ASAP program by IFAD, which really integrated doing these analyses with people, with communities, to be able to actually also be effective in this kind of work. Because if you don't work with these groups, it's very difficult to get them on board in implementing adaptation options for them.
Thanks. I think there's time for one or two more questions. The next one is, how do you advise project managers adapt to unreliable baseline data to design the M&E system? Yeah, that's, I think, in general, a good question.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I meant with that you periodically need to update step 1 and step 2 of this climate lens process, because I think also what is quite difficult is that these climate projections, of course, they change. They get better through time. And also the capacities and situations of groups change. So exposure and vulnerability analysis need to be adapted. And I think that one of the things that we did with this evaluation is we kind of turn it upside down, in a sense that you can have kind of fixed adaptation measures, like, okay, building a dike is an adaptation measure, or planting mangrove trees can be an adaptation measure. But also, for instance, private sector development, PSD programs, can be also adaptation. So it really depends upon the situation a group is in, what should be an adaptation measure. So it's not always about building some infrastructure or hurricane-proof housing or something else, but sometimes it can be about education, or it can be about health, things that you would not maybe think of directly, but still they could count as an adaptation measure once you did your analysis, well, okay, this group suffers from this problem. So then we need to focus maybe on private sector development to give them an alternative livelihood. So for instance, if agriculture is not going to work in an area anymore. So it's also a way of making this very difficult to measure exposure and vulnerability, to make it kind of measurable in your M&E system, is by making the analysis first, what should we do, and then start measuring that specific notion.
Thank you, Jelmer. Yeah, that's a clear answer. I will give the remaining 30 seconds to you, Peter, to round this session off. So please go ahead.
Yes, unfortunately, it's already time, but I'd like to thank every participant for their participation. Please check the entire report. You can do that by following IOB plus evaluation to our website and follow the links on the English section of the website to the report on climate adaptation. Thank you very much. Enjoy your time virtually or live in Brazil. And thank you, Jelmer, and thank you, Pim, for your presentation. Goodbye.
Yes. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.